Hello, Salt Strong Nation. Joe Simons, like Diamonds, back again. We're talking about the beginner's guide to inshore fishing. This is like the inshore fishing 101. It's a PDF slash ebook. That's what the cool kids are calling it these days. It's been out for, I don't know, 30 or so days, Barry, maybe
Yeah, that sounds about right.
about a month, and already raving reviews. It's just incredibly helpful, and it's even helpful for non-beginners, meaning people who have been fishing maybe their whole lives, or maybe have been fishing for bass or other species, and now are getting into inshore fishing. And man, do I really need all this new equipment? And what about tides and what all it's everything we all wish someone had told us when we were first getting started. This should cut off years and years of the trial and error and just simplify everything, especially on the tackle side. We spend a lot of time talking about tackle just because tackle gets talked about so much. And a lot of people think you need all this fancy stuff. And the fancy stuff's good, but you do not have to have it. And I think it actually is a detriment in the beginning when you just focus so much on all this tackle instead of just focusing on finding the fish, which is the whole point of our insider club. Obviously is finding the fish, because you can find the fish. You don't need all the fancy stuff. Everything becomes easier when you find the fish. That's really what this whole PDF leads up to. And if State of the End will give you the ability to get it for free, obviously, if you're an insider member, listen to this. It's already in your PDF cheat sheet library, and you can go get that one along with the other 30 or 40 PDFs that we have there in the cheat sheet library. So if you're not an insider member, what the heck are you waiting for? But I will give you one more chance to join if you haven't already towards the end. But for now, welcome to the show. First time ever, Barry Nicholson. What's up, Barry? Reverend Barry, that is.
Well, Reverend Barry is my stage name because I am a semi-professional musician, but I am not a reverend. I don't even play one on TV.
Oh boy. But on stage you do.
Yeah, indeed.
Reverend Barry and the Funk. So I got Barry on because Barry was the one who wrote this. So all of the past books and ebooks have been done by Luke or myself. And Barry was really a perfect person for this because he's been on our team now as a full-time employee for some time, but he was also a beginner not that long ago and went through all of these, like, right? I mean, just like pull your hair out moments, like, why can't this be simpler? And then finally kind of it all started clicking. And he's like, man, I can write a whole book about all the stuff that I learned. And then we all chipped in, and it really is a fantastic book. So it kind of starts with Barry's story. So give us the 30,000 view on your story. What happened? How did you get into fishing, and you got your first kayak, and the world's coming to an end because you can't catch fish? What happened?
Well, speaking of worlds come to an end, that was a great segue because it's all happened during the pandemic. So, like I mentioned, I was a professional musician or am, and so I'm used to spending every weekend playing gigs. And then, of course, for 6 months, when the world shut down, I can't play any gigs. So all I'm doing is going, on Sundays, at least in Florida, we could go to the beach. That was the one thing that we could do. And so I'd go to the beach with my wife, and I'd look out onto the water, and I happened to notice all these boats going by. They were leaving the close by jetty. And I just, sitting there on the beach thinking about how I'd like to be out in the water doing something as opposed to just sitting there on the sand. One thing led to another, and I just declared to my wife, I'm going to take up fishing. To which I think she laughed audibly because I had never fished a day in my life. She had actually fished more than I had when she was a kid. Her dad used to take her out. My dad had no such skills. And so, it was really kind of outrageous for me to even say that. But we had went on a staycation, because that's again what you did during the pandemic with our teenage kids. And during that time, we had kayaked. Again, my very first time on a kayak. And I always said that if I wouldn't have known a redfish had it jumped in the kayak. I didn't know what a redfish even was. So we had bought these kayaks, and I thought that was pretty interesting for the first trip. And then after that, I thought I need to be able to do something on these things. So I'm just going to take up fishing. Didn't know what I was fishing for, had no clue. So that's kind of how it all started.
So you got a this is it even a fishing kayak? Like, does it have rod holders? Like, does it have anything?
Yeah, to be honest, Joe, I can't really remember the order of things. I'm sure my wife does because she remembers these details, but I can't remember if we bought the kayak first, if I decided to do fishing first. But yes, to answer your question, it happened to be it was a very old ocean kayak.
Okay.
We had two big ones, extremely heavy. Bought a big rack, then decided to put on the roof of my SUV, and it was all I could do to lift it up there. That was one of my mistakes that I didn't mention in the book, but that's a bonus mistake that I'll throw out there, as I've made my share.
So you get this kayak, and what do you do? Like, how did you find your first spot? Where did you fish?
Well, I did, like a lot of people, I think. I started going on YouTube and just watching all these videos. And I learned by observation, and I don't know how I started all the path, just like saltwater fishing in Florida. I knew that a kayak, I couldn't go offshore, so I needed to go inshore. At least I knew that much. Then one thing leads to another, and I figure out I'm supposed to go after these certain species. Have no idea how to go about that. And then all roads kind of led back to Salt Strong, because it seemed like all the other videos that I would watch from a lot of these other gurus, and they were entertaining, and I still watch some of them, and they're almost like fishing TV shows that just happen to be on YouTube, but there's no real instruction. Whereas Salt Strong was sort of the opposite. It's like most of the videos were instructional, and so I really, as a beginner, I just found myself gravitating all the time. So I would just learn, okay, grass flat, mangrove. Okay, I need to kind of go maybe close to one of those things, and then I'd be like, okay, so I'd found a kayak launch close to my house. There's actually 5 minutes. I live
And
in
you're in Sarasota area.
yeah, I'm slightly south of Sarasota and Osprey. So yeah, I got a kayak launch 5 minutes from the house. That's cool. Doesn't mean there's fish close to it. Um, but nevertheless, so I kind of did that. And, but I was starting cold again, had no idea what gear to buy, any of those kinds of things.
So did you catch any fish your first trip?
No, my wife did, of course.
Oh man.
Uh, the first, I know now that it was a trout, but I didn't know then. I just knew it was a fish. And of course she didn't want to touch it. And so, I'm paddling like mad to get over to where she was. I feel so bad. I'm sure the fish probably died because neither one of us really even knew how to get it off the hook.
Oh
And
gosh.
wow, these things are slippery too.
You've come so far in a short time, my friend.
That I have. That I can say. That absolutely. I've been on a hyper learning curve, that's for sure.
Oh my gosh. All right. So first trip wasn't a bust. Wife catches a fish. You guys are getting excited. You at this point, you're not on with Salt Strong, right? You're not.
Oh no,
yeah,
no. This is
so
much earlier.
So you're just going all in. You join the Insider Club, and where did a lot of the failure come from? Because that's what you spent a lot of time on this ebook, right? It's just talking about, man, I wish I would have known this. I wish I would have not bought these rods and just stuck with this. Where was the worst part of the failure? Like, what was it like, man, I really wish I would have done this differently.
Well, I mean, my gosh, so I'm going to Amazon. I spent a ton of money on Amazon. I remember like those stimulus checks. Remember that's the I was gainfully employed at the time. We actually both were. So when they could send us a stimulus check, I was like, fishing gear money. It was just like manna from heaven. And so I started buying stuff on Amazon. And then I think, well, Walmart was still open. And so I would just go to Walmart and I would watch some random YouTube video of some guy. I remember he said, all you need is this what are those ugly stick rod? That's all you need. Didn't talk about sizes or lengths or anything like that. And then, and then like the reels. I don't know how I made the decision. Well, I think the same guy may have recommended, you need this pin, so and so, and I'm like, okay, good. I think, sure enough, they had those at Walmart, so that's why I bought it. And then as far as it was just a constant flow of watching videos. Some guy would make a recommendation. Remember, there was a guy, it was actually a Sarasota guide, said the only thing you need to catch redfish is a gold spoon. So of course I go right to Amazon, put a gold spoon in my cart, and so I had no idea how to fish it. or where I should cast or anything like that. But so it was just so much of this, just trial and error, just buying things. And I have all sorts of stuff in the garage. I've got cast nets in the garage I've never used. I've got all that sort of that kind of stuff. So roundabout answer to your question, and really what I spent a lot of time doing in the guide in the beginning is, if I knew then what I know now, yeah, these are the things that I would have bought, and these are the things I absolutely would not have bought because I know better.
Yep.
It would have saved me a lot more money, and it probably would have caught me a lot more fish. I would have had nicer rods earlier. So yeah, I mean, gosh, the list just goes on and on.
Yeah. No ugly stick.
No, no, I sold those in a garage sale, I think for $15 for a piece.
That and what's interesting, I've shared this story before in the past. It's been a while though. In our own father, obviously supports Luke and I, and is a big believer in Salt Strong, and obviously a member, and has been for many, many years. But in the very early days, it wasn't clicking for him, because YouTube was around. Obviously, it wasn't as big in the fishing space as it is today, 7 years ago, but it was obviously around. There's tons of stuff out there, and we're like in year one, and my dad's just like, well, like, can't you find the answers to all this stuff that you're teaching on YouTube? And I said, yeah, you probably could, just like you found it, right? You can go from one video to another. And I said, but Dad, check this out. We got on my computer, and I went into YouTube, and I still have the screenshot of it. We used it in a video one time, and I just typed into YouTube, which is essentially a search engine, and I typed in how to catch redfish, just that one phrase. And you know the answer? How many different video iterations came up for that one question?
Oh, I can't imagine. 100,000.
Yeah, it was like 137,200 or whatever. So I got on my little calculator phone, and I said, Dad, all right, that, and in the first video, by the way, was two old dudes in Texas catching redfish, and it was like 32 minutes long, and they were really just joshing around and having a good old time drinking beers. Mm-hmm. And the next video was like 28 minutes long, and same deal. There was no real teaching. It was just seeing, back then it was a lot of the weirdest stuff made it to the very top. And so I said, Dad, take those first two out, which were over about 25 to 35 minutes long. I was like, let's just assume the average video about catching redfish is 5 minutes long. And we literally did the math. And I was like, it would take you 2.2 years if all you did was what Barry did, right? Is just go from video to video. And that's 24 hours a day, nonstop, no sleeping, no eating, no even fishing. So I get 2.2 years just to get through all those videos. And I'm pretty certain if you had that kind of time and you watched that many videos on catching redfish, you would end up more confused than ever before, and definitely broke. Because you just bought all this stuff, and he finally got it. Like, that was his, I get it. You're saving me time, right? Which is money. You're saving me all the headaches and the heartaches and all the wasted trips to Walmart or Amazon or whatever. And that was when he finally got it. He's like, I get it now. And he shared that story with, his friends. Like, man, they're taking, just like with college, right? I mean, and maybe that's a little bit different, but with a lot of colleges now, even MIT, they're streaming 100% of their lectures, right? Out there. But I mean, what is it? Why would I even go get a college degree? Well, I mean, there's the benefits of being there, benefits of being able to ask the teacher real questions instead of just watching, the benefits of having the collective student body and friends in a dorm and study groups. I mean, there's always a benefit. It can't just be about watching a video and figuring everything out about an entire sport or entire species. And it's the same with this, with this PDF. There's no way you're going to be able to read it, right, and just all of a sudden start catching a bazillion fish. But doggone, it could definitely cut out years of struggle and trial and error. I thought it was very helpful too of what you said. You didn't just say, here's what you need, because some people would say, well, I saw this other person. You say, here's exactly what you don't need as well. I know because I've tried it. And not to say some of the stuff can't work, but you just flat out don't need it. So what were some of those things that you would say don't purchase? as a beginner, or for
Well,
any level for that matter?
yeah, one would be a cast net. Because it was
You're saying don't get one.
no, or anything that has to do necessarily with live bait. And I'm not anti-live bait. I don't have any kind of bias against it. And it's not, I know Salt Strong, we talk mainly about lures, but every time I go fishing now, it's early in the morning, you see the guys out with the boats, and a lot of times it's not a bad sign because I'm like, at least I know there's bait around here because they found some. But they're out catching the little fish before they go catch the big fish. Whereas with me, it makes, to me, it's sort of common sense. It's like, I've got limited time. I'm just like everybody, I've got a family and, a full-time job. I just want to get out, catch fish early. And the idea of catching fish first before I have to go catch bigger fish, it just always made logical sense to me to get good at using lures. And because I've worked for Salt Strong now and was an insider member for 8 months prior to being a member, I mean, I watched these videos every single day from every coach, and it's just like reiterating proof, and not to mention our insiders, that you can absolutely 110% catch fish with no need for live bait, maybe ever.
Yep.
At least these inshore fish. And so that would be the thing is, so if you don't need a cast net to catch any live bait, you don't need sabiki rigs, things like that. You don't need to stop by the tackle store to buy shrimp. You can if you want. There's certainly nothing wrong with that. And it's an easy way to catch fish, especially if you've got little kids or something and they just want to get, some snapper or something like that. But as a beginner watching those videos, you become completely distracted by that. You're like, well, that guy's, he's catching this live bait first, and he's doing all this stuff with sabiki rigs and this and that. And I mean, that might, again, as a person who just wanted to learn how to do this, it sent me on a completely different path. Oh, yeah. I've got sabiki rigs down in my thing. I've got a cast net. Yeah, exactly. Because and a time wasting one too.
Well, then, and not even the time obviously important, but where that goes, because this is what we did. Because we came from the freshwater world where we used lures, right? And we had a little John boat and a canoe, and all of a sudden we start reading Florida Sportsman magazine and watching some of these fishing TV shows at the time, the saltwater based ones, and they're all using live bait. And so we thought the same thing. Well, man, it's completely different than bass fishing. We have to get all this stuff, but it doesn't stop there to cast net. Because then you're like, well, man, if we really want to do this right, we need to have a nice live well. And so you can't have a kayak, right? Or you could, but it gets real cumbersome at that point and heavy. So it's like, well, man, we need to have a boat with a live well. Like all these things start adding up. And I wish someone had told us that. We still use live bait. We still have boats with live wells. But to Barry's point, if you just want to simplify it and have a ton more control and a ton more freedom, I would highly recommend you don't even try live bait until you can at least catch some fish with lures. And it's just so much more, it's satisfying. But I think the freedom and control are the two biggest words. Because to Bear's point, now you're not having to have all this other stuff to keep your bait alive. You're not having to go out an hour earlier just to hope and pray that where the bait is. And then in the wintertime, guess what happens? The bait is almost gone, if not completely void in many areas. And then it's like, what do you do? And I got friends still, Luke and I, we don't poke fun of them, but we definitely poke them a little bit. Like, guys, maybe you want to figure this out. And they literally don't fish the entire winter. As soon as the bait's gone, they just like, they don't know what to do. And and it's not that hard to learn how to catch fish with lures. You still go on to the same kind of spots. You're still trying to find the feeding zones, and talk about that. Talk about the lures, maybe your journey of what you did versus, I'm guessing, simplify at some point.
Well, I mean, I just got a confidence bait. I mean, I got real early on. Well, Slam Shady 2.0.
Oh yeah.
And kind of go back a little bit. A really important thing, and this is part of my journey, and one thing led to the other, was I think I watched the 90-10 webinar, on YouTube. And if you haven't seen that before, you can just go to YouTube or go to our blog and look up 90-10 webinar or 90-10 zone and watch that training. It's fantastic. And then of course you presented the concept of the Insider Club. But the one thing that really latched me in, got me in was that you had the weekly game plan.
Mm-hmm.
And that's basically where Luke spends 10 minutes. He goes through and so it's fresh information. It's Friday. I know he's in Tampa Bay and he's going to say these are the types of spots that you need to fish right now. If it's wintertime, you need to be up in these creeks, this, that, and the other thing. And that honestly was the thing that I wanted. I wanted a coach essentially to say, go here and fish here and use this type of bait. Mainly it was just go here. So I got on the weekly game plan first, and then certainly along the line I ended up buying the Slam Shadies because obviously it was talked about so much. And so the first fish that we caught, definitely that trout, but that was on a Slam Shady. I mean, it was so I just got to using that. I got really used to that. I think I might have graduated to the bomber a little bit later. I haven't even used a jerk shad until about a year ago, but that's why they call it a confidence bait. At least I can go out there and do that. And now of course I always use it with Dr. Juice, which is a fish scent that, and again, that makes perfect sense to me because fish have such a powerful sense of smell. So putting it onto that piece of plastic makes total sense, and it works. Yep. I mean, I won't fish without it, and my pants smell like it.
Yeah. I went fishing today. I can still smell it on my hands.
Yeah. If you want to, guys, hint, this is why I've been married for 30 years, because you learn things like don't put your fishing pants in with the rest of the laundry or you'll be in the doghouse. Yeah.
I have to do my own laundry now because of that. There's no mixing Joe. It's Lauren, the kids, all that stuff together. Mine has its own smell basket, basically.
Yeah, I believe it. Yeah, especially in the summertime, it's a mix of all sorts of smells.
Mm-hmm. All right. So what else? What were some other big maybe chapters and learning lessons, maybe some other things to avoid?
Some things to avoid. Another one would be like, I was thinking about this today, when we were first fishing flats, I didn't really understand the difference between weedless hooks and jig heads. We were just fishing with jig heads. Looks like a hook's got a weight on it. Okay, you throw it out there with paddle tails, and we're just like, man, this stinks. We keep pulling in all this seaweed. I didn't know what a weedless hook was. And then so now it's like, it's funny. I hardly I use that's always my go-to. Now with the Haas hooks, those are great. But just knowing the difference, that's where I got a little bit more advanced when I started figuring out depths and how to these different rigs essentially.
Yep.
And how to keep yourself from getting hooked up or hung up. Another huge revelation for me when I finally did graduate away from the ugly stick and got, I think my first real rod, quote unquote, was a TFO Pro.
It's a great rod.
I mean, I couldn't believe how far I could cast with that thing compared to the old rod. And in fact, a funny story was that, when I was very, very first fishing, I remember seeing this guy that was wade fishing came out close to where I've been kayak fishing in this one spot. And man, he'd made one cast and I just watched it go across the sky. And I was like, man, I mean, I was like, what is that guy doing different than me? Because he's no stronger than me. I thought I had to have some certain technique or whatever, but I didn't realize it was my rod. We call them wet noodles for a reason. It's like, but until you really feel the difference or put it into practice, and then the idea that that trout, especially on those shallow flats, I mean, they're extremely sensitive and they know you're there, and so it makes sense that you need to get that lure a mile away from you if you can.
Yep.
And it's not your strength, it's not your technique, it's that rod. That rod will launch that thing, and it was a revelation. So it's like that is exactly when I think I had like 3 or 4 cheap rods, I replaced them all. So I've got like TFOs, I've got a Bull Bay, and I can't wait for the new rod to come out. Because it just, the difference was so dramatic. I couldn't believe it.
That's crazy. And yeah, I remember we had we had a gentleman on our boat one time, and he was catching nothing. And we were on a flat, and Luke and I were bombing. We were all using the same lures, Slam Shady, and we're just making bombs. And he's like, I'm talking like, I want to say 20 to even 30, maybe 40 feet, like less. Like it was bad. And and we're on the same boat, right? We're on the same little Maverick and the same skiff. And he's like, what are you guys doing? And we saw, so he didn't have your problem. He didn't have the wet noodle. He's a live bait guy. All he had was this super stiff Shimano. It was just like using a broomstick. It was the opposite. It was just stiff as could be, and he couldn't make a cast. And because he never really had to, right? He was used to making a short cast and let the bait go swim around. And we let him use one of ours. And it was just like this light bulb went off. He's like, I get it now. He's like, this is game changing. And that's why we talk about the importance of a great rod over reel. I think that's a big misconception you talk about as well, is so many people want to put the reel first. We did forever. And that rod, it's doing all the most important work. It's getting it out there further. It's setting the hook, right? It's actually fighting the fish. Like, especially the bigger fish. I mean, like today we caught some big snook. I mean, that it was the rod, the reel was just taking line in and out. The rod was what we were maneuvering these snook out of the docks with. I mean, it was doing all the work. And Luke's, this might've been before you came on board, but he talked about, it was the football field effect. Do you remember that? You ever hear that with casting? So this is where it really became aha moment for a lot of people. So he says, all right, let's just say it's Luke and Joe. We're similar in terms of fishing and hours in the water, etc. And Luke's got a perfectly balanced 7.6 rod, and I've got a 7-foot rod, maybe not as balanced, maybe more live bait stuff. And Luke said, all right, if we're both on a flat, and we're, to your point, Barry, we're trying to get as far away from the boat as possible, right? That's the further away in general, the better the chance the fish there don't know that we're there yet, right? So I have a better shot at the fish that are further away versus the fish that are right below us, if there are any. And he says, all right, so let's just say I can only get 10 more feet per cast. And right, with lures, you're making you name it. Let's just say it is 30 casts every 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever it is. And he did the math and actually timed it. And it turned out he was getting an extra football field of length every hour and 15 minutes if he could just cast 10 feet further using artificial lures. And so if you had an 8-day or an 8-hour day, if you're up there all day long, that's 8 football fields in the best possible zone there is. No wonder he catches so many fish. Right. I mean, and that's when people are like, whoa, that's amazing. Even in just 1 hour, we're talking about an extra football field of the prime time feeding zone versus the other person. So yeah, that is so critical.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, I guess as men or anything, you're going to be attracted to the reels, right? They're the little machines that look cool. They've got all the cool shiny parts and all that, and they are important. But I think in another podcast, you guys had talked about all reels do the same thing. All the spinning reels, they're all the same functionality. And when it comes to casting, all they're doing is letting the line out. A cheap one does it the same as a very expensive one. But I mean, I do have nice reels now because that's the other thing that I, again, didn't know, learned the hard way, is wow, saltwater is super corrosive. I had no idea until you've learned the real meaning of grinding your gears, is when you get that salt water into your gears. And it's just, I mean, I remember taking it to the tackle shop and they kind of took 2 seconds looking at it going, yeah, we're not going to be able to fix this one, bro.
Tragic.
I mean, or they did fix it. It was like $35. And my wife was like, didn't you pay 70 for that? We just paid half. Why don't you, I'm like, you know, so you learn. It does help to buy, you don't have to have a super high quality reel. I mean, I don't think I've ever spent more than maybe $120. But I've got like a Daiwa, the BGMQ and some of those, and they are super smooth. I do rinse them off, but I don't really worry about the salt water anywhere near as much as I, did before. Of course, I don't dunk them either. I've done that. Not to say that I won't again, but that doesn't help.
Yeah, I think I think if I could just get two, and I was starting out, I would get two TFO Pro rods, and that's what Luke and I use. I mean, it's what we're using today, catching big snook. They'll do everything. I think it's the best value rod out there. I think as you get better, invest in a much better rod. You will see a difference. But it's just like a tennis or anything, golf. You probably shouldn't go out and get the most expensive clubs or racket day one. You get something good though. Like, it's tough if you have just horrible equipment that's falling apart and subpar, but the TFO rod, the pros can use it and beginners can use it. And then I would get a Fuego and I would get a BGMQ. I would get those two. The BGMQ is going to be a little bit tougher and probably something you could use around docks or if you're going after some bigger fish. Whereas the Fuego is just your all around, flats fishing for redfish and trout and normal size snook. That's it. And it's that simple. And that's what we use still today, after doing all this and there's a million different things that we could use and we just keep going back to the basics. They keep working. What else? Any other big ideas or revelations or other big chapters before we go and let everyone get a copy of this PDF?
I've graduated from, I had a kayak, I had a boat club membership. Now I have and I didn't really talk about this in the book. I have an inflatable skiff. And I waited quite a fair amount in that time as well. The one thing that I would just say about, the boat club membership at the time again, we were still in the pandemic. I wouldn't necessarily ward against it. Depends on what you want it for. My family liked the idea of going out on boats, but just remember that those boat club memberships typically do not have trolling motors. Once I started doing a lot of inshore fishing, or at least attempting to, then I saw the value of it. So now with my inflatable skiff, I have a trolling motor on the front, a little 5-horse Honda motor on the back, and that can get into super skinny water. So that would be something that if you're considering boat club memberships, but you're really serious about inshore fishing, you might want to think twice about that, but that was a learning lesson for me, just as far as was I valued, because I found that my family, it's like we went boating a few times and all of a sudden they kind of lost interest. So, but being able to get into that super skinny water and using trolling motors to get up, I've had some fishermen say that they'd rather fish without a hook than fish without a trolling motor. And I can kind of see why.
Yeah, it'd be tough.
Yeah.
Not impossible. I mean, we did that 3-part series on the Freedom Boat Club. And we caught a lot of fish, but it definitely eliminates things that you just can't do, unfortunately.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. All right. So where can everybody get a copy of this bad boy? Insiders already have it in their library.
Yeah, the insiders, you just go to the you go to your cheat sheets area and you'll see it right there. It's called the Ultimate Beginner's Guide to Inshore Saltwater Fishing. And then we're going to put a description or in the description below the podcast, we'll have a link to where you can go. If you're not an insider, you can go just opt in to get it. And that'd probably be, or if you happen to be on the blog post looking at this, just look down and you should be able to see the link there to download it. But it's 38 pages, I believe. And
it's got pictures. Everyone loves pictures.
It's got lots of pictures. But again, it just goes through all the tackle. Buy this, don't buy this. This is really what you need. This is probably optional. And then of course we go into, kind of the basics of finding fish, and expanded a lot. Because I'm the marketing manager for Salt Strong, I knew where all the blog posts were that go in more in depth on certain topics, what knots you need and how to tie them, all that stuff. But it just puts it all in one place, to where it's like, if you just read through this and really just focused on this and paid attention, you would be 90% ahead where I was even after 6 months.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'd use the word light years ahead of
Okay.
if you just did it by yourself through old school trial and error. There's nothing wrong with that, but I'm like you. I'm busy. I value my time. I'd love a shortcut. So this is it's a shortcut. And get it even if you're, and let's just say on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being brand new newbie and 10 being a full-time guide or a pro, even if you're a 3 or 4 or 5, get it and check it out. It is very well laid out. As Barry said, tons of different pictures and tons of different links to kind of everything that truly is important out there. And it will definitely save you some time. And then the other piece of it, this is, I think we talked, yours is about 30 days old, if you will. I mean, it's still a brand new PDF, but what's happened in the last 30 days is all the smart spots with the smart fishing spots. So definitely check that out if you haven't. That's at saltstrong.com. If you're a member, you'll see where you can download it right to your phone, tablet, computer, etc. And if you're not a member, what the heck are you waiting on? Someone to grab you by the hand and show you where to fish every week, because that's exactly what it does. I mean, these smart spots, remember the old school maps, right? They're great. It's a great starting point, but the maps haven't moved in 30, 40, 50 years. It's the same old spots, and fish are moving every single day. They move every single tide cycle. They certainly move every single season. And so our smart spots are taking human intelligence, actually like real guides, like real pros are putting their human intelligence in there on the best types of spots for certain scenarios. And it ties in with the artificial intelligence, which is bringing in data like the wind and the weather and all of these barometric pressure and all this. And then it's using a combination of those to predict the best spots in your area. And we have it from Texas to Florida to Virginia and everywhere in between. And we're adding new areas all the time, and new spots are going up literally daily now. So it just continues to get better and better and stronger, and really cool testimonials have been coming in. Wow. Like, I mean, some legit fish. It's been really cool to see that.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. And I remember my first trip out after the oysters feature was released, the oyster bar feature.
Yep.
Again, if you haven't seen it yet, you could just click on a button and it reveals where all these oyster bars are within the entire state of Florida, because it comes in from the Florida Wildlife Commission, I believe, right? And there was this area that I'd fished before, didn't know there was an oyster bar there, and it was a big one. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to head to that spot. And it's the coolest thing, because I'm on the boat. I've got my phone in my hand, and it's nothing but water. And I'm looking at the arrow as on the boat, and all of a sudden I look down and I'm right on top of an oyster bar that would have had no idea was there. Of course, I fished it, caught a couple solid trout actually on it, and again, that was the coolest experience. I was kind of giddy whenever I saw I was like, wow, look at there. It's right there where they said it was going to be. And it's right where the arrow is on my phone.
That's so cool.
Yeah, I mean, and again, because I'm a beginner, I didn't know anything about old school fishing spots. So or maps or what have you. So this technology, I mean, it's just come about in the last month. It is absolutely game changing, and it works. Yep. It's worked for me. It's working for all of our coaches, but more importantly, it's working for our insiders.
Yes.
So we're thrilled. Yep. Very excited.
So it's smart fishing spots. And we even have a site we just set up, smartfishingspots.com. Really just honestly a sales page to learn more about it and kind of see some visuals on what it does. That's smartfishingspots.com. If you're not a member and you want to check it out, but if you are a member, saltstrong.com, while you're logged in, you'll be able to download it everywhere and get unlimited access completely for free to our members. So thank you guys. Thank you, Barry, for coming on. Thank you for writing a great PDF, and everyone go check that out, download it, print it out, highlight it. And actually probably best to even use it on a computer, just because you have all those hot links on there to get to everything. But either way, it's great resource, and will certainly save you a ton of time. So thank you, brother. Anything else, Barry?
My pleasure. No,
Sing
sir.
us
I'm
a
good.
song or anything?
No, I'm gonna have to charge for that. Sorry.
Oh boy, this is uncomfortable. Okay. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. Leave any questions, comments down below. Otherwise, we'll talk to you on the next episode. Peace. We out.
Bye.